Jakari signed the divorce papers with a smirk, his mistress kissing him while his family threw her bags into the rain. They celebrated her exit like a victory. But when a billionaire walked through that door, took her hand and whispered, "Let's go home, baby girl," Jakari dropped to the floor, begging. It was a Tuesday evening when Jakari decided to end his marriage. Not in private, not with any kind of dignity, but right there in the living room of the house they shared, surrounded by the people who should have protected her, but chose to destroy her instead. Nia stood near the window, her hands folded in front of her, watching the rain streak down the glass. She knew what was coming. She'd felt it building for months. The coldness, the distance, the way Jakari looked through her like she was invisible. He sat at the dining table with a pen in his hand and divorce papers spread out in front of him, and on his lap, kissing his neck and whispering in his ear, was Simone, his so-called business partner, the woman who'd been slowly sliding into Nia's place for the past year, one lunch meeting and late-night phone call at a time. Simone wore a tight red dress and a smile that said she'd already won. She looked at Nia like she was nothing, like she was already gone. Jakari's mother, Lorraine, stood in the doorway with her arms crossed and a look of satisfaction on her face. She'd never liked Nia, never thought she was good enough for her son. Too quiet, she always said. Too soft, not ambitious enough. Not the kind of woman who could push a man to greatness. And now, watching her son sign those papers with Simone draped over him like a trophy, Lorraine felt vindicated. She started clapping, slow, mocking claps that echoed through the room. "Finally," Lorraine said, her voice dripping with contempt. "5 years of dead weight. You're free now, baby. Free to be with a real woman." Jakari's sister, Candace, stood off to the side with her phone out, recording the whole thing. She was younger, meaner, the type who lived for drama and didn't care who got hurt as long as she got content for her social media. She giggled as she filmed, zooming in on Nia's face, trying to catch the moment when she broke. But Nia didn't break. She just stood there, one hand clutching the small silver locket that hung around her neck. The only thing she had left from the woman who raised her. Jakari looked up at Nia then, and his smirk was so cold it could have frozen fire. "You know what your problem is, Nia," he said, his voice calm and cruel. "You brought nothing to this marriage. No connections, no money, no ambition, just your little teaching job and your Bible verses. I needed a partner who could help me build something, and all you did was hold me back." Simone kissed his cheek and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Don't waste your breath on her, baby. She's not worth it." Nia didn't respond. She just kept her eyes on the rain. Her chest felt tight, like she couldn't breathe, but she refused to let them see her cry. She'd learned a long time ago that tears only made cruel people crueler, so she stayed silent, and that silence made Jakari angrier. "Say something," he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "Defend yourself! Or are you really that pathetic?" But Nia didn't say a word. She just turned away from the window and walked toward the door. That's when Lorraine stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Where do you think you're going?" Lorraine said. "We're not done with you yet." Candace laughed from behind her phone. "This is gold. This is straight-up reality TV." Simone stood up from Jakari's lap and walked over to Nia, getting close enough that Nia could smell her perfume. It was the same perfume Nia used to wear before Jakari told her it was too cheap. "This is my house now," Simone said, her voice low and venomous. "My man, my life. You were just keeping the seat warm." And then Lorraine and Candace grabbed Nia's bags, the ones she'd quietly packed that morning because she knew this day was coming. They dragged them to the front door and threw them outside into the rain. One bag landed in a puddle. The other one split open, spilling clothes onto the wet driveway. The neighbors were watching now, peeking through curtains and cracking doors. whispering to each other about the scandal unfolding on the quiet suburban street. Nia walked out into the rain. She didn't run. She didn't beg. She just stepped into the storm, her clothes soaking through in seconds, her hair sticking to her face. She bent down and started gathering her things, putting them back into the torn bag as rain poured over her. And behind her, inside the warm, dry house, Jakari popped a bottle of champagne. The sound of it echoed out into the street, followed by laughter. They were celebrating, toasting to freedom. Lorraine raised her glass and said, "To my son finally waking up." Candace posted the video to her group chat with the caption, "Trash took itself out." Within minutes it started spreading. Friends of friends, strangers, people who didn't even know Nia but felt entitled to judge her. The comments came in fast. Some people felt sorry for her, but most just laughed. Nia stood at the curb, drenched and shaking, clutching her torn bags and her silver locket. She looked down at her phone. One missed call. She stared at it for a long time. The rain made it hard to see the screen, but she didn't need to. She knew whose number it was. She'd had it saved for years, but never used it. Part of her wanted to call back. But another part, the part that had been trained to survive alone, told her to keep walking. So she did. They had no idea who they just destroyed, and they had no idea what was about to walk through that door. But before we get there, let me take you back. Because Nia's story didn't start in that cold house with a man who didn't love her. It started in a small southern town where the air smelled like magnolia trees and red clay, where people knew your name and your grandmother's name, and where love wasn't loud, but it was deep. Nia grew up in a town so small it didn't even have a stoplight. Just one main street, a church, a general store, and rows of houses with wraparound porches where old folks sat and told stories until the lightning bugs came out. She was raised by her grandmother, Miss Althea, a woman with hands that could braid hair and bake cornbread and pray the heaviest burdens right off your shoulders. Miss Althea was the kind of woman who didn't need much to be happy: a garden, a Bible, and her grandbaby. Nia's father, Vincent Monroe, had left when she was just a little girl, not because he didn't love her, but because he had a dream that was bigger than that little town could hold. He wanted to build something, an empire. He started with nothing, worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and clawed his way up until he became one of the wealthiest black men in the country. Real estate, investments, buildings with his name on them in cities Nia had only seen in pictures. He sent money. Every month, without fail, an envelope would show up with more than enough to take care of her and Miss Althea. He called when he could, his voice always warm but distant, like he was speaking from another world. And maybe he was, because while Vincent was building his empire, Nia was building a life in the dirt and the sun and the love of a woman who taught her that wealth wasn't just about money. Miss Althea would sit on the porch with young Nia and say, "Baby girl, your daddy's out there chasing something he thinks he lost. But you got everything you need right here." She'd tap Nia's chest, right over her heart. Don't ever forget that. When Nia turned 16, Miss Althea gave her the silver locket. It was old, scratched, with a tiny clasp that stuck sometimes. Inside was a faded photo of Vincent holding baby Nia, both of them smiling back when things were simpler. And on the other side, written in Miss Althea's shaky handwriting, was a phone number. "When the world forgets who you are," Miss Althea said, "this will remind you." Nia wore that locket every single day, even when Miss Althea passed a few years later, leaving Nia alone in that little house, with nothing but memories and a paid-off deed. Even when Nia moved to Atlanta to teach 2nd grade at an elementary school, in a neighborhood that reminded her of home. She wore it, and she never called the number, because Nia didn't want her father's money. She didn't want the life he built. She just wanted something simple. something real. And when she met Jakari at a coffee shop one Saturday morning, she thought maybe she'd found it. Jakari was charming back then, confident but not cocky. He had big dreams and a smile that made you believe he could pull them off. He talked about starting his own consulting firm, about helping Black-owned businesses grow, about building generational wealth. Nia loved that about him. She loved his ambition, and he loved her gentleness. Or at least, that's what he said. They dated for 2 years. He met her friends, went to her church, spent Sundays at her little apartment eating her cooking and talking about the future. And when he proposed, down on one knee in the same coffee shop where they met, Nia said yes without hesitation. She thought she was choosing love. She thought she was building a partnership, but she never told him about Vincent. She never told him that her last name, Monroe, belonged to a man whose net worth had more zeros than most people could count. She wanted Jakari to love her for her, not for what she came from, not for what she could give him. Just her. And for a while, it worked. But then Jakari's business started struggling. Clients fell through, investors backed out. The pressure started building and Jakari started changing. He became distant, irritable. He'd snap at her over little things. Forget to say good morning, come home late smelling like somebody else's perfume and tell her it was just work. Lorraine made it worse. She'd come over unannounced, walk through Nia's home like she owned it, and make little comments that cut deep. You're not dressing right for a woman married to a businessman. This house is too small. You should be pushing him to do better. A wife is supposed to be an asset, Nia. What are you bringing to the table? And Nia, trying to be a good wife, trying to keep the peace, just smiled and nodded and kept praying that love would be enough. But love isn't enough when the other person stops trying. Simone showed up about a year into the marriage. Tall, glamorous, aggressive. She called herself Jakari's business partner, said she had connections that could save his company, and maybe she did. But she wanted more than a business partnership. Nia could see it in the way Simone looked at Jakari, the way she touched his arm a little too long, the way she laughed a little too loud at his jokes. Jakari swore nothing was happening. She's just helping me network, he'd say. You're being paranoid. But Nia wasn't paranoid. She was watching her marriage crumble in real time. And the worst part, she didn't know how to stop it. The lies got deeper. Simone started showing up at the house more often. She'd sit in Nia's living room, drink from Nia's cups, and talk to Jakari like Nia wasn't even there. Lorraine loved her, called her sharp, called her the kind of woman Jakari needed. Candace posted pictures of the three of them together, tagging Simone like she was already family. And then Simone made her move. She told Jakari that Nia was cheating, said she had proof, showed him photos that Candace had manipulated, pictures of Nia talking to a male co-worker at a school event, cropped and edited to look like something they weren't. Jakari exploded. He didn't ask questions. He didn't give Nia a chance to explain. He just came home, threw the photos on the table and screamed at her, called her a liar, a cheater, a fake. I gave you everything, he shouted, and this is how you repay me? Nia tried to defend herself, tried to tell him the truth, but he wouldn't listen, and eventually she stopped trying. She stopped defending herself, stopped arguing, stopped crying. She just became numb. Every night, she'd sit on the edge of the bed and hold her locket. She'd open it and stare at the picture of her father and the phone number Miss Althea had written. She'd think about calling, but something always stopped her. Pride, maybe, or shame, or the belief that she could fix this on her own, but she couldn't. The final insult came on what should have been their 5th wedding anniversary. Jakari took her to a restaurant, a nice one. Nia thought maybe he was trying to make things right. Maybe they could start over. But when they got there, Simone was waiting at the table. sitting in Nia's seat. Lorraine and Candace showed up too, like it was planned. Jakari sat down next to Simone, and Nia just stood there, frozen. "Sit down, Nia," Jakari said, pointing to the chair across from him. "We need to talk." She sat, and that's when he slid the divorce papers across the table. "It's over," he said. "Sign them." Nia looked at the papers, then at Simone, then at Lorraine's satisfied smile, then at Candace's phone recording everything, and something inside her died that night. The part of her that believed in love, in loyalty, in trying harder, it just stopped. But something else woke up, something quiet but unbreakable. That's how we got to that rainy Tuesday evening, to Nia standing at the curb, soaking wet, clutching her torn bags and her locket, to Jakari inside, celebrating with people who thought they'd won. But they didn't win. They had no idea what they just set in motion. Nia stood in the rain for what felt like hours, even though it was only a few minutes. She was cold, exhausted, broken in a way she didn't know a person could break, and for the first time in 5 years, she stopped trying to be strong on her own. She pulled out her phone. The screen was wet and hard to see, but she didn't need to see it clearly. She knew the number by heart. She'd memorized it the day Miss Althea gave it to her, even though she swore she'd never use it. Her hands shook as she dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and then a voice answered, deep, warm, familiar even after all these years. "Nia?" She couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight, her chest too heavy. "Baby girl, is that you?" She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. And then, in the smallest, most broken voice, she whispered, "Daddy, I need you." There was silence on the other end, not the cold kind, the kind that comes before a storm. "Where are you?" Vincent said, his voice shifting from warm to something hard and sharp. I'm at Jakari's house. He threw me out." "I'm on my way," Vincent said. "Don't move, don't go anywhere. Do you hear me? I'm coming for you right now." The call ended, and Nia stood there in the rain, clutching her phone, feeling something she hadn't felt in years, hope. 30 minutes later, the street was silent except for the sound of rain hitting the pavement. Nia was still standing at the curb, soaked through, shivering. Some of the neighbors had gone back inside. Others were still watching, whispering, wondering what would happen next. And then they heard it. The low hum of engines. Expensive engines. A black Rolls-Royce turned onto the street, moving slow and deliberate like it owned the road. Behind it came another and another, a convoy of luxury SUVs, all black, all sleek, all moving in perfect formation. They lined up along the curb, their headlights cutting through the rain. The neighbors stepped back onto their porches. Candace, who'd been inside laughing with Jakari and Simone, heard the commotion and looked out the window. Her eyes went wide. "Yo, Jakari," she called. "You need to see this." Inside, Jakari was pouring another glass of champagne, his arm around Simone, feeling like a king. He walked to the window and looked out. His face went pale. "Who the hell is that?" Lorraine said, pushing past him to see. The back door of the Rolls-Royce opened, and out stepped Vincent Monroe. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a gray beard and a tailored suit that probably cost more than Jakari made in a year. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He just walked through the rain like it wasn't even there, his eyes locked on Nia. When he reached her, he stopped, looked at her soaking wet clothes, her torn bags, the exhaustion in her eyes, and his jaw tightened. "Let's go home, baby girl," he said softly, taking her hand. Nia looked up at him, tears finally breaking through. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't call sooner." Vincent shook his head. "You have nothing to be sorry for." He turned to his security team. "Get her bags, get her dry, get her in the car." 2 men in black suits stepped forward, picking up Nia's torn, wet bags like they were precious cargo. Another man draped a coat over her shoulders, and Vincent kept his hand on hers, guiding her toward the car. That's when Jakari came running out of the house. "Wait!" he shouted, stumbling down the driveway in his socks. "Wait! Nia, who is this? What's going on?" Simone followed, her red dress soaked through, her confidence evaporating. Lorraine and Candace came out too, both of them staring at Vincent like they'd seen a ghost. Vincent didn't turn around. He just kept walking. "Nia, answer me!" Jakari yelled, his voice cracking. "Who is this man?" Candace pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and Googled Vincent Monroe. Her face went white. She dropped her phone. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's Vincent Monroe, the Vincent Monroe." "Who?" Simone snapped. "He's a billionaire," Candace said, her voice barely audible. "Real estate mogul, one of the richest black men in the country." Lorraine's knees almost gave out. No, that can't be." Vincent finally stopped walking. He turned slowly and his eyes locked on Jakari. Cold, unbothered, final. "You just divorced my daughter," he said. Jakari's legs buckled. He dropped to his knees in the rain, his hands shaking. "Sir, I didn't know. You had 5 years to know her," Vincent said, his voice steady and lethal. "You chose to humiliate her instead." "Please," Jakari begged, crawling forward. "Please, I made a mistake. I'll fix it. I'll do anything." Vincent raised one hand. Jakari stopped moving. "You had your chance," Vincent said. He pulled out his phone, never breaking eye contact with Jakari, and made a call. "Yeah, it's me. Pull all Monroe Holdings investments from the Jennings portfolio. Effective immediately." "No," Jakari gasped. "Sir, please, that's my only investor. You'll destroy me." "You should have thought about that before you threw my daughter into the rain," Vincent said. Simone backed away slowly, trying to disappear into the crowd of neighbors. Lorraine tried to speak, tried to explain, but Vincent's gaze silenced her. He turned back to Nia, his face softening. "Come on, baby, let's get you home." He helped her into the back of the Rolls-Royce. The door closed. The convoy pulled away, smooth and silent, leaving Jakari on his knees in the driveway, sobbing into his hands. The neighbors watched. Some recorded, some whispered, but nobody helped him up. Within 48 hours, Jakari's life fell apart. Monroe Holdings pulled their investment, and every other investor followed. Banks called in loans. His business collapsed. The house, the one he'd thrown Nia out of, was actually in her name, inherited from Miss Althea. The lawyers came and took it back. Simone ghosted him, blocked his number, deleted him from her life like he never existed. She moved on to the next man with money, the next opportunity, the next conquest. Because women like Simone don't stay when the money's gone. And it got worse for her too. Someone, maybe one of Jakari's enemies, maybe just karma, leaked information about her. Turned out Simone had been sleeping with 3 other married men at the same time, all for money, all for connections. The story went viral. Her job fired her. Her apartment complex evicted her. Her face became a meme. And just like that, the woman who wanted everything ended up with nothing. Lorraine's church friends, the ones who used to praise her son, turned on her. They'd seen the video Candace posted. They'd heard the story, and they wanted nothing to do with a woman who celebrated cruelty. Lorraine stopped going to church, stopped answering her phone, started living in shame. Candace lost her job too. The video she posted, the one she thought was funny, got flagged for online harassment. Her employer saw it, saw her celebrating someone's pain, saw her recording someone's trauma for likes, and they let her go. Her social media accounts got banned. Her friends distanced themselves. She learned the hard way that cruelty on the internet doesn't stay on the internet. Jakari ended up in a 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of town, working a job that barely paid rent. He tried to reach Nia, called from different numbers, sent letters, showed up at places he thought she might be, but she blocked every attempt. She was done. And doors that close that hard don't open again. He'd scroll through old photos sometimes late at night when the loneliness got too heavy. Pictures of him and Nia smiling, anniversaries, Christmases, moments when she looked at him like he was everything, and he'd realize too late what he'd thrown away. But some lessons only come after the damage is done. 6 months later, Nia sat on the porch of her father's estate. It was a beautiful place, quiet and green, with trees older than she was, and a view that stretched for miles. She was glowing now, healthy, peaceful, confident. Her hair was longer, her smile was real, and the weight she'd been carrying for 5 years was finally gone. She held the silver locket in her hand, opening it one more time to look at the photo of her and her father, at the number Miss Althea had written. She smiled, tears in her eyes, but they weren't sad tears. "You told me I'd know who I am," she whispered to the picture of her grandmother. "I finally do." The screen door opened and Vincent walked out with 2 cups of tea. He handed her one and sat down beside her, both of them looking out at the sunset. "You never needed him to see your worth, baby girl," Vincent said softly. Nia nodded. "I know that now." They sat in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable silence that only comes when you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Some people will only see your value after you're gone, but by then, you'll be too far ahead to look back. Protect your peace, know your worth, and never dim your light for people who live in darkness, because the same silence that made them think you were weak, that's the same silence that was protecting something they could never touch. Your dignity, your strength, your truth. Nia didn't need revenge. She just needed to remember who she was all along. If this story hit you deep, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have forgiven Jakari, or would you walk away like Nia? And remember, karma always keeps receipts. I'll see you in the next one.